Welcome to On the Agenda, Steptoe's guide to state attorneys general and other enforcement, regulation, and compliance matters. From AI to smokestacks, consumer protection to financial services, data privacy to antitrust. Join Steptoe's seasoned litigators, counselors, and advisors as they deliver the critical insights and industry knowledge that government officials respect and that companies, nonprofits, and executives can use to navigate whatever legal challenges they face.
Before we dive in, a quick note. The fentanyl statistics we discussed in this episode reflect 2024 data as of the recording date. With that context in mind, let's jump into the conversation. Hello, and welcome to On the Agenda. I'm Michelle Kallen, a partner at Steptoe's DC's office, representing clients in new and evolving areas of law. I come to Steptoe by way of the state AG world, where I served in the Virginia Office of the Attorney General as Solicitor General of Virginia. I am joined today by my colleague, Steve Newman. Hi, Steve.
Hi, that's me, Steve Newman. I'm a partner in Steptoe's Los Angeles office, where I've handled a wide range of matters responding to multi-state Attorney General investigations, as well as other types of AG-led proceedings.
Our guest today is David Sunday, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania. He's a lifelong Central Pennsylvanian, and he served as the District Attorney of York County from 2018 to 2025, where he led major crime prosecutions and narcotics enforcement. AG Sunday's path to public service began with the United States Navy, where he served in the Operation Desert Strike and counter-narcotics missions in South America. AG Sunday brings a deep commitment to justice, shaped by his military service, his legal career, and leadership in tackling issues like the opioid crisis and elder abuse. Welcome, AG Sunday.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So we want to start by talking about your path to becoming Attorney General of Pennsylvania. You were born and bred in Pennsylvania. What drew you to the role of Attorney General?
I was. So by way of background, I kind of have a unique path, I think, that brought me here. And it's important. I like to explain it. I like to talk about it to people because a lot of the things I experienced in my life have impacted a lot of my policies, in particular with criminal justice. And so, I joined the Navy when I was 18. I was deployed all over the world. I came home. I worked at UPS for 8 years. So I worked at UPS all through my undergrad education and also through law school. I went to law school at night while I worked at UPS. And so those 12 years really impacted my world. I went pretty much directly into the district attorney's office. And you mentioned York County. A lot of people probably have no idea where that's at. It's directly north of Baltimore. And so York County goes from Harrisburg down to the Maryland border. And like I said, we're north of Baltimore. And so because of that, we have in York County, we had a tremendous amount of crime that had to be fought. And so the opioid epidemic decimated York County, along with many, many other parts of Pennsylvania. And so that was part of my professional life, was really growing up as a prosecutor in a courtroom, dealing with homicides and gang violence and all of the absolute devastating effects of the opioid epidemic. And I always want to talk about that because, if our communities aren't safe, literally nothing else matters. And so a lot of things we'll end up talking about today, I promise you, will be viewed through that lens.
That's really great. And could you talk a little bit about how it is to work with Governor Shapiro and other members of state government, and whether there are any issues because you're members of different political parties?
Right. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that a lot of our history and our experiences in life oftentimes create the lens through which we view problem solving, right? And so to that point, I think because I came to this role from a courtroom, from being a courtroom county prosecutor, and before that being in the military, I live in a world where I have to solve problems. And as a public servant, I view my role as trying to have the best possible outcomes for citizens. And with that in mind, some of the best, most amazing things we did when I was a DA on the opioid epidemic, on the mental health crisis, in areas such as reentry, in areas such as gang violence, all of it was done, quite frankly, through the lens of nonpartisan not just bipartisan. Like we had a problem to solve, and we did everything we could to solve it. So that's the way I view my job as Attorney General, in particular with regard to public safety. And so, quite frankly, I mean, my office works with the governor's office literally every day. We find every area humanly possible that we can collaborate on that has positive outcomes for the community. And I think that the citizens expect that.
How has that experience been so far? Are there areas that you find surprisingly positive to work on? Are there areas that you see,
Yeah, of course.
especially in this challenging environment
Yep.
at a national level? How has the experience been now coming into the statewide office
Yes.
and working with this kind of bipartisan lens?
Well, if you can see me right now, I had a full head of hair a few months ago. So, but no, I mean, what I will say is that to begin with, obviously, there are people I work with every day, including the governor, who we will view the world differently based on, personal feelings we have about different issues. And clearly, I'm a Republican attorney general. He's a Democrat governor. And, there's a lot. He was a former attorney general. And so, there are areas that we collaborate on with regard to the mental health crisis, with the opioid epidemic, with cybersecurity, all kinds of things. In Pennsylvania, the AG's office defends all state agencies when they're sued. And so, and I know as a former solicitor general, that every state is different, and so the Commonwealth Attorneys Act in Pennsylvania lays out obviously the way that we have to work together. And so I'm mandated to defend him. And that happens all the time. Every day our offices work together. So whenever he's sued, we defend it. And so with that being said, that has been, I'm going to say, easy in some ways and challenging in others. So, and what I mean by that is, obviously in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth Attorneys Act mandates that the Attorney General shall defend the constitutionality of statutes, unless and until a court of competent jurisdiction determines that it's not constitutional. And so to that point, I have taken that very seriously. And I have made it clear to my office that we will defend all statutes. And whether we like the statute, if we don't like the statute, if I wake up one day and I feel a certain way about it. And I think that that's an important part of being the Attorney General, because when we do that, we are defending the rule of law. And we are creating a set of circumstances where the citizens, the 13 million Pennsylvanians, know that when a law is passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor, that the AG will then do his or her job in defending that statute. I think that when an AG does not do that, then what that does is it creates an atmosphere where the legislature in particular may not know if the hard work that they put into getting to yes on something will actually result in that being defended in court. I think it also sends a message that would mean that I, as Attorney General, would be stepping in as one person and I'm going to say stepping in and usurping the will of the people, because our laws are the will of the people as exhibited through the ballot box. And so that has been a challenge in some ways, because I think that in the past that may not have always been the policy. But to that point, very simply, I think that's the way to go. It's the way that I'm approaching my job. And I will say that my experience so far has been that the citizens have been very, very happy about it. So
that's terrific. And I think to a large degree, the voters expect the Attorney General to be beyond politics in many respects, that this is, that, in a sense, your number one client is the law itself and the rule of law. And I think it's terrific that you bring that to the job, because certainly in other states, we've seen other things. Can you talk a little bit about any opportunities to collaborate with other states, other attorneys general throughout the country?
Sure. So one of the things I did was and I know you're very familiar with all the different AG organizations that are out there. In Pennsylvania, we have a huge consumer protection division, okay, or section. And I think it might be third largest in the country. So obviously, as a former prosecutor, I feel very strongly about public safety and protecting citizens and victims of crime. And we have a very large criminal division in the Pennsylvania AG's office. It's physically the largest division in our office is the criminal division. And we have a lot of broad criminal powers with regard to prosecuting everything from corrupt organizations to organized retail theft, child predators, all kinds of stuff. With that being said, we obviously have a huge consumer protection division as well. And I've really leaned into that because my experience as a prosecutor has been that when you can mitigate an issue in advance, that's really the best outcome. If something bad happens, obviously I want someone to handle it and take care of it and make me whole as a citizen and as a victim. But I would much rather that never happen. And so we have leaned heavily into consumer protection. And so I volunteered to be co-chair. So I'm co-chair of the National Association of Attorney Generals Consumer Protection section, along with the Illinois Attorney General. And one of the reasons I did that was to help put me in a position where I could build relationships with my colleagues around the country so that we could leverage our resources when those opportunities do present themselves to help the citizens of the Commonwealth. And so that's one thing that I did. At the same time, obviously, I've spent a lot of time building those relationships with my Republican colleagues. And through NAG, it's allowed me to try to develop those relationships as well. And so with that being said, some areas right off the bat, we have an absolute total crisis with regard to mental health in this country. In Pennsylvania, it's something that I've watched for almost 2 decades as a prosecutor, developing as a dad, watching, being hypersensitive to what is happening with regard to some forms of technology, social media, with kids. I'm very worried about the world my son has to grow up in. And so one of the priorities that I've made very clear in my office is we are going to do everything we can to find ways to increase access to mental health care. And in particular, where we have a special role in that, I think, is in the area where people connect with the criminal justice system in the throes of a mental health crisis. I'm a guy, I've been a homicide prosecutor. I've stood in front of more juries than I can count, where I've asked them to return verdicts, putting people in prison literally for the rest of their life without the possibility of parole. I've done death penalty cases. You absolutely must have accountability in our system. We have to have accountability. You have to hold people accountable. At the same time, I think it's crucial that we embrace redemption as well. So I call it accountability and redemption. And so when I used to be the DA, we were able to decrease crime by like 50% as a result of sort of marrying those philosophies together. And so along those lines, that path brought me to recognizing what the mental health crisis has done to the criminal justice system. Our prisons are full of people with serious mental health issues. It's torn families apart. It has put our brave law enforcement officers in very, very unsafe positions as a result of dealing with a lot of these individuals. And so where I have found some areas of mutual understanding and concern is in the mental health area. For example, I'm in a lot of communication with the Attorney General in New Jersey on these issues. I know we're going to be presenting together on these issues, and we already have. And so we're trying to find ways really to work together in that space. Obviously, in all the tech areas, I mean, technology is an amazing, wonderful thing. It's great, and I love it, and it's important for society. And it's important as well to make sure that that tool doesn't present opportunities for bad guys to do bad things. And so that's an area where we are also collaborating as well. I work with my colleagues, especially in my region here, with regard to the work we do with fentanyl. I announced, actually it was yesterday, that we in Pennsylvania have so far this year, with the Attorney General's office in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies, we actually have removed 50 million doses of fentanyl off of the streets so far just this year. 50 million potential lethal doses of fentanyl. And that work was done in collaboration not only with our federal, state, and local partners, but also with attorneys general in our entire region here working together and collaborating. And so, long story short, I'm going to find every way humanly possible to collaborate with all of my partners to achieve all of these common sense public safety goals.
Yeah, that's and drug issues are something that goes across state borders, right? It's not something that's restricted to individual states. It's something that everyone should be
Everyone,
aligned, right? Um,
everyone,
on the consumer protection
right?
issue, what's your view of an AG's role when it comes to issues like data privacy and cybersecurity? We're seeing a lot of AGs open investigations, issue
Mhm.
CIDs in that context. Is that something that's a priority for your
Oh,
administration?
it is an absolute priority. We have data privacy laws here in Pennsylvania with regard to reporting incidents that the Attorney General enforces, and so not only is it statutorily mandated in certain ways, but I think that moving forward as a society, this is an absolute crucial mission that all AGs should embrace. The technology that bad guys are using all over the world to not only steal our data, but to steal it and scam citizens, to steal it and sell it, to do all the horrific things that are happening with it. I mean, we've got to do everything in our power to to just work with each other and be in a position where we not only can protect the consumer. So back to your original question, I mean, I could talk for like 10 hours on this topic. So, but to your original question, very simply, if we aren't the ones that are fighting this issue, then who will? Is really what this comes down to. And we are so reliant on technology from morning till night. I mean, my son is in fifth grade, and they everything they do is geared around technology. And I know when I was his age, I was like rolling in the mud somewhere. And so the world has changed drastically, and we have to change with it. And so that is in the space of dealing with things after they happen. But it just as important, it's in the space of preventing these issues in the very first place. And that goes to making sure we have the right technology in place, that we have the right funding for that technology, that we have the right expertise for that technology, and at the same time that we are doing everything in our power to educate citizens so that they can be their biggest advocates and protect themselves as they go through their lives. This is the future, and we have got to keep up with it.
Yeah. And following up on that a little bit more, as we see more and more expansion of artificial intelligence and just similar technologies, as a public official, how do you at the
Mhm.
same time both encourage
Yeah.
technological growth and development while at the same time preventing the bad actors from abusing that technology?
It's
Because it can be a very difficult push-pull.
Stephen, that is the issue of the day. And to begin with, there's a couple points I want to make, and thank God for editing, because I know that I'm going to be talking a lot about these issues. But that's a great question, Stephen. I appreciate it, and I want to start with the impact on children. And so we get very excited about new technology as adults in a nation that values capitalism. It's just amazing, the technology. I'm excited about it. As the attorney general and the chief law enforcement officer and a dad, I'm also at the same time frightened, because we have a huge, for example, we have a big child predator section in my office here. And I have been I am very worried about how predators are using this technology to get to children. It is a very, very serious thing. It is a very real thing. Our children are tied into social media and the internet nonstop. And, when I was younger, even when I started as a prosecutor, you didn't essentially have this world that brought the victim potentially with the predator from morning till night. Okay. Now that exists. And it exists in a way that parents who are just trying to do their best to get through the day, right? They're going to work. They're trying to get their kids to whatever event they're going to. They're making dinner. I mean, what busy parent has the time to sit down and become an expert in all of the brand new apps that come out all day long? And so we are very worried about that. We have seen terrible cases where predators are utilizing, the question initiated with AI. And this ties directly into that, because when you have advancements in technology like that, it really increases the likelihood of bringing these people together. I mean, we have seen cases where kids go on their gaming systems, and predators try to get to them through a gaming system, where it might be through some type of chat, it might be through social media. And when you now have those systems that are supercharged by artificial intelligence, you're streamlining in a way the way that those two people are brought together. And so I think that it's very serious. I think that you have to do everything you can to protect kids. And ultimately, the way you achieve those dual missions, by advancing technology and all the amazing things that comes with that, and at the same time protecting kids, quite frankly, is by the AGs communicating with the companies, working together, collaborating, throwing the flag when a flag needs to be thrown on an issue. And I can tell you from my experience, most of these companies, they want to do it the right way. And so there's a lot of collaboration and discussion, but at the same time, there are times where we have to get involved, and we need to get involved, and we're mandated to get involved ethically to protect kids. So I don't think it's an easy answer, but I think, like anything else, you have to view it holistically, and you have to, really bring this all together. And I think that especially right now, as the technologies are emerging, now's the time where you have to set the protections in place, and be in a position, so that as we move forward, we can handle these issues as they come up.
I mean, one of the interesting things when you're dealing with novel technology is
Right.
that sometimes existing laws don't
Exactly.
plainly apply, right? And part of the art of being a skilled attorney general is identifying when the laws apply,
Right.
when they don't, and when there's a need for some sort of legislative advancement and
Mhm.
fix. So when you're dealing with these issues, how do you go about balancing all those interests?
Mhm.
I really liked how you mentioned the role of educating the community,
It's critical. Yep.
because even if the existing law doesn't plainly apply, the community can take a role in helping advance and encourage legislation. But how do you, especially being relatively new to the AG world, how do you balance looking at applying old laws to new technologies, working kind of in this area where the law and the scope of power might not be perfectly settled?
Well, I think that, so to begin with, I lived in that world as a prosecutor for many, many years. And it wasn't necessarily at that point when in technology, but in the world, for example, of when the opioid crisis first hit, like back in 2015, we had novel drugs that were coming out on the street like every other day, that the law didn't keep up with regard to whether or not they might have been a scheduled controlled substance, like whatever that may have been. And so the reality of human life is that technology will always move faster than legislation. And so with that in mind, I think that it's absolutely crucial, number one, to do what we can to educate citizens. I mean, I talk about that from morning till night every day. Pennsylvania has like the second highest amount of senior citizens in the country. And when you look at the aging population and everything that comes with that, and you sprinkle in advancements in technology, in particular with AI, we've have this really hypercharged environment where scammers are getting to senior citizens from morning till night, 24/7 every day. And there's no way that that the legislature can keep up with the literally almost daily changes in the way that bad guys are using this technology. And so what I think, and especially, as a DA, we did this, as the Attorney General, we have to give citizens the tools to help protect themselves. And that's not just in this area, it's in every area. I mean, we do seminars all the time with parents to teach them about how to, work with their children to avoid human trafficking, for example. We literally talk to thousands and thousands of senior citizens through seminars. I mean, probably millions through constant press releases, doing everything we can to explain to them some simple things they can do to really protect them from almost all of the potential technological advancements. Okay. And that's very simple. If you get an email and it's not from me, or, me, meaning when I'm talking to my parents, like if I tell them, if the email is not from me or my brother, don't respond. If you don't know where it's coming from, that literally by itself solves like 80% of the problems. And so there are little things people can do that prevent a lot of heartache. And so I just think that, as we all age, that, God willing, we all get there at some point. Father Time's undefeated, so it'll happen. That we're all in a position where we have ways to protect ourselves. I mean, I can tell you guys right now that, it is horrific when I talk to a senior citizen who literally gave away their entire nest egg because they thought they were helping or protecting someone. And this happens, and this isn't like me being dramatic for purposes of this podcast. It is a very real thing, and it happens all day long, and it's one of the saddest things that we see. So prevention is absolutely crucial. We can never keep up. And also think about it through the lens of a legislator. I mean, they're inundated with, a billion things all day long. And what we're talking about at a very high level, macro level conversation right now are extremely complex issues. When we talk about technology and AI, when we talk about energy, when we talk about all of these different things that impact people's lives every day, it is next to impossible for the average citizen to figure it out, to be honest. So
yeah, and certainly when representing private clients in AG matters, my business clients tend to appreciate how government is often has better access to information about what's actually happening out in the world with respect to the product. And so when I'm talking to my clients about how to go into a discussion, I say, well, let's just pretend you hired a management consultant. You would listen to what they have to say because you're paying for that advice. Let's listen to what these public officials have to say. And in my experience, in terms of negotiating an assurance of voluntary compliance or something similar, the best outcomes have been where both on the official side and on the private business side, everyone comes into things with the spirit of collaboration.
Yes. Stephen, that is unbelievably important. So, a lot of the questions were sort of framed with me as a newer AG. I will tell you right now that the work that's done by a lot of the, professionals in the AG space has been unbelievably helpful to me. And what I mean by that specifically is learning about industries, learning about companies, learning about the different industries' markets, learning about just how things work in the different companies. I am not a knee-jerk reaction type of guy. and I'm very cognizant of the law of unintended consequences. And I think that, and I can tell you without question that in my first 8 months on the job, we have solved a lot of issues and prevented a lot of issues through communicating. Those meetings that I have with companies, with attorneys, or that my staff does, we learn a lot during those meetings, and at the same time, the companies do as well. I mean, oftentimes, really bad things happen as a result of a miscommunication, and a lot of issues can be prevented through sitting down and having a real conversation. Obviously, and as you all are well aware, sometimes you have to go to certain places. We are attorneys and there's litigation that has to happen, but I'm a firm believer that you can really solve a lot of the issues and the core issues at play by sitting down, staring at each other, and having a conversation that is thoughtful, that's meaningful, and respectful.
It's interesting because I think, having been on both sides, the government side and the now representing private companies, sometimes private entities who've kind of received scrutiny or interest
Yeah.
from an attorney general are open to sitting across the table, but others have had difficult experiences with other attorneys general. So how are you finding, stepping into this role and looking to have these open, collaborative conversations? Are you finding that companies are receptive to those sorts of conversations? Do you find that sometimes they're hesitant in light of prior experiences, and especially as part of the transition process to transition from one attorney general to another? How has that experience been for you?
Yeah. Michelle, it's been both. I mean, it's been both, but I will tell you that everyone has been. So I think okay, so let's go back a second. Strike that. Let's go back. I will say this. I will say that my personal experience has been that companies, regardless of whatever history exists, have been very open to dialogue. And I have to view that as a positive thing through the lens of my staff, meaning like my staff, the AG is the person having the podcast. The staff are the people that are working every single day, like getting the work done, speaking with companies, speaking with attorneys from morning till night. They're the ones that are really in the grind. And so I think that one of the ways that it has been successful is I have listened to my employees and their issues, and I've gone into these meetings with an understanding of what they have experienced. And that has put me in a place where I can be as transparent as possible and as thoughtful as possible. And I think that companies have been very responsive to that. I mean, I will say that, especially, I've been very impressed with a lot of the attorneys that work in the AG space. And before I got elected attorney general, I didn't even realize there was this AG ecosystem. Okay. And I think because people, honestly, like the two that I'm speaking with right now, that have been in this, as like on both sides of the issue, like the thoughtfulness of the dialogue has been just outstanding. And I will say 9 out of 10 times the meetings have been extremely productive, and both parties have walked away in a better place.
Yeah, I guess just following up kind of on the transition
Yeah.
side of it. I mean, I obviously take interest in state SG's offices, and really excited about you building a Solicitor General's office
Right.
at the helm of Stephen Raiola. So I was wondering what your thought process was in starting
Sure.
a Solicitor General's office, and how that experience has been in both
Right.
building the office and your goals for the office.
So here's what I'll say. So, coming into an office, when I got elected, I received a lot of advice from a lot of people. And some advice was great. Some of it was not great. And so I really tried to channel, again, my experiences in the Navy and working at UPS. I mean, I tell people that all the time. I mean, this is a people business. And, obviously that's all within the constraints of the facts and the law, which is clearly the most important part of what we do. And with that being said, one of the things I realized very quickly was that there is this SG sort of ecosystem as well that exists in America. Okay. And I believe 46 of the states have solicitor generals. And and so with that knowledge, in Pennsylvania, we have not had one. And what I realized was that for good or for bad, the SGs were all connected, and this isn't like a partisan thing. They're all connected. The SGs are connected. They speak all the time. They confer on legal issues. They network with each other to identify areas where we can collaborate. I mean, it is a really important part of this office, in particular with regard to communicating and identifying ways that we all can coexist. And so, with that being said, that was an area that I felt we were lacking. Pennsylvania we are a big state, and we have a very large AG's office, and we have amazing, amazing attorneys, brilliant lawyers in here. And so I realized that we needed to have a voice in the SG space. And I wanted to find someone who was someone that understood Pennsylvania, that understood the philosophy of this office, that had that philosophically aligned with me, and someone who was smart and bright and experienced and could communicate well with people. And so that's where I started with on this process. And I feel very strongly that we identified that person in Stephen, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think that it's important, in any organization, your goal as a leader is to get the maximum, output from your team. And all teams are different. Like some teams, they're just, you have different personalities, different people, different positions, different everything. And in Pennsylvania, because we have not had an SG, and I really appreciate your question, I wanted to make sure that we do this in a way that's respectful to all of the amazing lawyers that have already been in place doing awesome work. And so, long story short, that was my thought on this. And maybe if we check back in a year from now, we'll see how things are going. But so far, it's been absolutely fantastic.
That's terrific. Now, one collaboration that we haven't talked about too much so far today is collaboration with the federal government, or I think Pennsylvania is probably in a different position than my home state of California, in that California is politically in its own world, whereas Pennsylvania is sort of the prototypical purple state in a lot of ways. How are things with the president and the U.S. Attorney General and Homeland Security, and just how is it going given your priorities and the president's priorities?
So to begin with, I think that I made it my mission to be in a position to collaborate with everyone to the extent humanly possible. And so with that being said, one of the first things I did was I reached out to the mayor of Philadelphia, and this I will answer your question, I promise. So I reached out to the mayor of Philadelphia, and I said, listen, let's work together. Let's be a team. And she said, I am 1,000% in. Let's go. And so obviously the mayor of Philadelphia is a Democrat and I'm a Republican. And, a lot of people were a little unsure, like what that would look like. I mean, is she really going to work with you? I'm sure she probably felt the same way. Like, what's this guy all about? And we have developed an outstanding relationship. When I did my announcement yesterday about the fact that we have seized 50 million doses of fentanyl, that was done in Philadelphia. standing with the Philadelphia Police Commissioner, the mayor's office, the federal FBI, Homeland Security. We work nonstop with the Department of Justice. We have an outstanding U.S. attorney in the Eastern District here in Pennsylvania, David Metcalf, who we collaborate with nonstop. And so, what I can say is this: is that, with my priorities and the way that I've approached this office, we've all. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like. I know people don't really. We don't hear a lot of this, but we are all working together very well. And I have an outstanding relationship with the Department of Justice, outstanding relationship with all of my federal partners, and we've communicated very, very well. And so that's been something that, I mean, honestly, it's very Pennsylvania, to be frank. And so that's how it's been. I mean, yeah.
So what advice might you give to an attorney general in a state that did not vote red in the last election?
Well, I don't, so it's interesting because so that's a great question. That's an outstanding question. And I guess what I would say is have dialogue. I think that is something like we just miss so much today in America. People don't get together in the same room and have a conversation. I loved when I was a DA and a courtroom prosecutor looking at jurors, talking to defense attorneys, talking to witnesses. I was in the community like every day, and we solved a lot of problems by literally taking the time to just interact as humans. I'll give you a prime example. We had a tremendous gun violence, or more of it was a gang violence issue in the city of York when I was a DA. And we immediately came together as a community, and I befriended, the police chiefs befriended our Black Ministers Association in the city of York. And we developed these relationships, and we actually worked on that before 2020. And so this started before that. And we all sat in a room and we were kind of like, all right, well, where do you want to go with this? And we got to know each other. And then when bad things happened, guess what? We didn't automatically jump to a place of that, there was, ulterior motives or different reasons. And what happened was, like, we started to work together and there were amazing outcomes. And then the community loved the outcomes. And so when the community started loving the outcomes, then the elected officials said, uh-oh, there might be something to this. And so it just became a self-fulfilling prophecy where, even though philosophically, as a conservative, I mean, there are things that, and this isn't the Black ministers, this is just generally, there are things that I believe in that some others, they just may not. But at the end of the day, the positive outcomes that occurred as a result of us collaborating just took over. And my advice is, sometimes it's better to get off social media. It's better to not have performative press conferences. It's literally better to go have a conversation. And you know what? It may not always work. It may not always work. But I promise you that there will be times when it does, and you got to start somewhere. And so that's my advice.
I wonder if there's something special about Pennsylvania that allows for that approach. You have world-class cities, you have agriculture, you have manufacturing, you have finance. I mean, it's really remarkable how so much of America winds up somewhere in Pennsylvania or has its origin in Pennsylvania.
It's beautiful.
So it is.
I mean,
it is beautiful.
Philadelphia, our last year, our Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. We have, Pennsylvania is a huge rural state. We have Pittsburgh on the other side, another amazing world-class city. And so I think we're really a microcosm of America. And I think, and another point I want to make is, in Pennsylvania, if we don't do that, none of us will succeed, period. And when I was in the Navy, I was on a ship. I was an enlisted guy, so I like swabbed decks and ship paint and did that type of work. And I was on a ship with like 200 and I think 20 other crew members from all across America and Alaska and the Philippines. And we, had a mission. We were stuck in the middle of the ocean under some of the most stressful situations anyone could be in, from the Persian Gulf all the way down through South America. And we had two options. Option A, don't get along or don't figure out how to get along. Option B was figure it out. And if we didn't figure it out, we would never achieve our mission. And it would actually put us in very, very unsafe situations. And so that's like what brought me to this point. And there's a lot of people, it's just the reality. If we don't do that, we will not be able to achieve our goals. And I think that that's something that is very, very helpful, but I think it's beautiful. And I think that, it's again, what makes us PA. So.
Do you think there's something that the broader country can take away from Pennsylvania being purple Commonwealth, not state?
Commonwealth, yes. Yeah.
But is there something that we can take away as kind of inspiration at a broader national level, the way that you've been working collaboratively with the governor, the fact that people in Pennsylvania really do come together and talk across the aisle? As we kind of come to a close here, I'd love your thoughts on something the broader United States can take away.
Well, what I will say is this, obviously, again, Republican AG, Democrat governor, Democrat-controlled House, Republican Senate. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when they couldn't agree to what to name a bridge. But that being said, there are a lot of times where they agree on really important things. And I will again highlight my press conference yesterday in Philadelphia with 50 million doses of fentanyl that from the FBI and the DOJ all the way down through the Philly Police Department that we work together on. And I think the bigger takeaway is that you have to find a place to start. The world is too complex. There's too much going on. You have to pick a place to have a victory. And because victories, they build upon themselves. And we have chosen to do that in particular with public safety. And so we are working very, very hard on public safety. We are working hard on substance abuse. We're working very, very hard on the mental health crisis. And so when you pick some places to start, good things happen. And so that's my advice. We're humans, and the reality is we will disagree. It happens every day. I disagree with the governor on many, many things. But at the same time, you got to find places to move the ball forward. I don't think society will accept if you don't do that. So that's for whatever it's worth, that's my advice. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. It's just the reality of all of us as humans. And so that's what I have to say.
Well, AG Sunday, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as well.
I did. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to On the Agenda from Steptoe. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. To learn more about Steptoe, visit steptoe.com. When the stakes are high, experience matters.